everyone, Jane here. Thank you so much for watching today and welcome to you all. Today I am going to be creating in this Dina Wakley art journal, and I'm going to be using this beautiful little fairy as my main focal point. Now this was sent to me by one of my lovely subscribers, Carmen, who also sent me some beautiful happy mail, and so I thought I would incorporate her with some more images from the Fungos book by Marta, because I do believe this little character is also one of Maremi's collage images. So I'm starting off with some tape down the middle of my page, because this journal I do find is a little bit what can I say, sometimes the middle of the pages don't seem quite as well bound as perhaps I would like them to be. And just for a change, I'm going to be starting with some stamping. Now, I got out a number of archival inks, and I will list all of the colours that I use in the description box below as usual, as along with all the other products that I use in this project. And I did have a very pale grey that you saw me start off with, which I actually found was too pale. I don't worry too much about things like that when I'm stamping in the background, because I know that I'm going to be putting lots of things over the top. So I'm not trying to get perfect images. And to be quite honest, when you're stamping into an art journal, it is very difficult to get really crisp images, which is why you will not really see me ever stamping out proper focal points in my journals. I use my background stamps directly on the page. If I want to stamp a focal point, I'll stamp it separately and add it on afterwards, or I'll stamp it onto tissue and use it as collage instead. Now, I'd already decided that as well as that beautiful fairy, I wanted another focal image to be at the opposite corner. And because of the way the images were facing, I decided to do them one in the bottom left, one in the top right, and with my fairy being the main one down on the bottom and then a smaller image at the top. So I'm sort of making little frames. I knew that with this page I wanted to stick with the muted tones that was in the imagery, and I wanted it to be not a simple page because it's actually quite a lot of building up for this, but very muted in its colours, simple in, apart from the areas where the main images was, I wanted quite a lot of empty space. So I keep going back and checking what I've laid out so far. Now the stamps I'm using are both from Lemon Creation, and they are Science I Don't Get and Theo's Birds. And I chose them ones because some of the paper that was around the toadstools or the mushrooms had like scientific formulas and things like that, and some music notes. And these stamps really went with that theme. And I'm just adding a little bit of the washi tape that's down the centre into the page as well to make it all match together. Now, once that was all dry, I decided to add on some of the Kuretake Gansai Tambis, and this is the Art Nouveau set. I have to say this is definitely my favourite set. I've also got the 36 set, which I don't tend to use. Maybe I just need to get that on and do a video with it. But I'm going for, again, these muted colours. So I was looking at the image again to see what went with it, and the colours that I chose were pale aqua, coral pink and beige grey. Now I added on the pink first, and I've added quite a lot of water because I wanted it to be quite a flowy look, but I'm sticking to the areas where mostly where the stamping is, apart from allowing a bit of drips, and then I let that dry almost completely. There were some spots that weren't totally dry, but I wanted it to be mostly dry before I added on the next colour. So I'm then going in with this beigey grey colour, beige grey I should say, not beigey grey, beige grey, and I'm extending some of the lines sort of slightly across to make the two pages feel like a whole. I didn't want them to look like they were two totally separate pages. I wanted them to show that they are all part of the same thing. Now this paper is watercolour paper. I do believe it's a cellulose paper, it's not a cotton paper, but it means I didn't need to worry about priming it. However, there were some areas that were a little bit odd because I had the matte medium in the background, and so it wasn't quite as good over some of those areas, but it worked out okay. Next, I wanted to add some stenciling on, and this is a memory box stencil. It's called Mesh, and again, I'll list it in the description box. It's a very old stencil, a well-loved stencil, one that I do use an awful lot, which you can probably tell from how it looks. And it has this really nice sort of distressed edge around this. So I was using that to its best effect by placing my stencil in a way that I could get that really distressed look down some of the edges. And the paint I'm using is the Amsterdam acrylic. I didn't want anything too stark, so I didn't want to go for a white. I wanted to keep with those vintagey, muted, subtle tones, and so it is titanium buff light. Then again, once that was dry, every time I'm adding mediums, I'm letting them dry in between. Sometimes I use a heat tool, sometimes I let them dry on their own. And this is where I'm now going to add in the collage. Now, these are the little bits. I had some little bits of paper from around the mushrooms when I cut them out, and I wanted to add them in as a bit of grounding for my images. So I laid things down first and then see where I'm going to put everything before I actually stick them. And I'm using the Liquitex Professional Matte Medium. It's just the one that I like, but if you've got other sorts of mediums, if you've got a soft gel medium, if you've got rice paper glue, collage glue, a glue stick, whatever you like to use to glue, is fine. I find that with these sorts of papers, this glue is fine because it's very, very thin. If I was sticking anything that had a bit more substance to it, was a bit more like card, I possibly wouldn't use this glue so much. I would probably go for my acrylic glue, my Cosmic Shimmer, because that gives you a little bit more thickness to the glue that helps things to stick down. So it's using the right glue for the right job, but there is no, one particular glue that is the one to use. I would always say, if you've got something already in your stash, use that. That's the best product to use. Now, I did start sticking on some of the bits of this paper, and I thought I'm going to just add some extra bits of collage in here. So this little bit at the top I didn't mind, but some of the other bits I then added on here onto the center. I was trying to make that center seam tie in a bit more, which I don't think I overly needed to do. I did it in a different way in a little bit. So I stuck these bits down, and as soon as I stuck them down, I didn't like them. But the good thing about this sort of glue is it doesn't dry straight away. So you can, if you're careful, pick them back up. And that is what I did. I just left that little bit at the top left corner. And then I could see there was these bits, you can't see it so much on the video, but in real life, I could see there was some bits that weren't looking as nice as I wanted them to. So I added in a bit of the beige grey again, just to tie it all together, to get rid of some of the areas that I wasn't liking, and to sort of like take some of that starkness away in the background. Because even though I wanted that white space, I didn't want it perhaps as white as it was. Then I wanted to add in some shading, so I'm going in with the Inktense pencil from Derwent, and this is the bark colour, probably my most used colour out of all of my Inktense pencils, perhaps apart from Deep Indigo. I do also really like that one. And I'm just adding some shading where the images are standing to give them that grounding so they don't look like they're just floating, because even though I have put down the stamping and I have put down the paper to act as grounding, I still felt it needed something a little bit with a bit more depth to be able to see that. And I'm just taking my ink or my colour from the tip of the pencil. I'm not getting wet on that wooden part because I don't want to ruin my pencils, but just a damp brush on the tip is fine. And I find with these pencils, if you put a little bit down and it's a little bit too dark, just go in with a bit of water and you can easily water it out. So I'm just adding that around the grounding, and then just a little bit around the bottom parts of the images to add a little bit more shadow as well. I then decided that a couple of splashes would also just add a little bit to the images. Because I've added that matte medium over the top of the collage, that also means that when I got splats on, as long as I was quick, I could actually wipe them off her face. Now this is where I wanted to try and tie that centerpiece into the rest of the page a little bit more. So I went in with the same washi tape. I think it's the same one. Yeah, it is. But I tore little bits off and just added in some bits coming off that center. I don't know. It's not meant to be anything in particular. It was just to try to make that not such a stark piece just on its own. So I've added in some extra little bits around the page as well. And then I'm just going over them with a little bit of matte medium to make sure that they are stuck down, because washi tape you can remove once you've stuck it down. Again, once it's all dry, I'm then going in with some of these Tim Holtz clippings. Now, I'd picked the first couple in advance. I decided what I was going to use. Now, they're all like little snippets out of books, so they don't make sense so much on, well, you can stick little bits down on the road, but you can sort of build them up to make it like as if like a found poem type of thing. And I'd chosen the first two, and then I decided I wanted more. And I'm sorry, because this now takes me a little while of going through these. I really couldn't find what I wanted to start with. Eventually, I sort of was I changed my mind again. I didn't like that one after all. So I'm going back in, reading through them, and they are good fun. And I wanted to use these ones because I felt that the idea of it went with the sort of whimsical, muted nature of the pages, but also because they are on that same sort of tone as the rest of colour as the rest of the page, that they would really sort of work with it. So once I put them down, they are stickers, so they are sticky, but I find with most stickers I like to add an extra little bit of glue because I never feel that they stick as well as they could do. So if you have enjoyed this video today, do please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd love it if you could do that as well. And if you do happen to see a hype button, if you could hit that, that would be really helpful as well. Thank you. And also a big thank you to Carmen for sending me this beautiful little fairy image. I really love her, and I think she works really well on the page with all the other elements. And at the end of the video, you'll also see a list of all my lovely YouTube members who are my super supporters, and a great big thank you to them for their little bit of extra support as well. And so until the next time, thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.